seems that Governor Christie will have to wait a little longer to write that book.
It's a new day in Trenton. Let's hope it happens again and again and again.
In a surprise vote, New Jersey lawmakers shot down a bill that would have eased the state's ethic laws so the governor could write a book, while also hiking salaries for state officials and judges. It became known as the ultimate back scratcher bill, fast-tracked through the legislature while benefiting the political elite. But ultimately, the public prevailed.
Giving big pay raises, if you want to call it a Christmas bonus, to the political elite as they were struggling with the largest tax increase imposed in a decade, that they were just outraged.
Now, many are describing this as a rare uprising against Governor Christie, who has become famous for cutting deals with Democrat bosses while muscling his ideas through the legislature. So what does this mean for the governor? You know, could we see another book deal on the horizon? Here to weigh in, we have State Senator Kit Bateman.
I think many things. First of all, I think the public was outraged, and the more the public heard about it, the more they reached out for legislators, obviously with your help, 101.5, Chasing News. It was a really groundswell against it. But I think the legislators started to feel the pressure that, you know what, it's time to do the right thing for the public. And I think that many were concerned about the backlash, and many of them, when they actually analyzed it, realized it was a bad deal for the New Jersey taxpayer.
Is this the end of the line for Chris Christie? I mean, it seems that he doesn't have the weight that he once had in terms of the ability to apply pressure to these guys.
Well, in all fairness, usually, you know, a lame duck governor doesn't have the influence they had the first time. But also, you know, his popularity is way down, and I think legislators are starting to feel that, you know, they got to become independent. They have to run for re-election next year. I think people are concerned about some of these votes, and I think that getting the word out there is important because people listen.
It was absolutely the right thing to do for legislators. Governor Christie has an approval rating it's lower than any governor in any state in the last 20 years. So clearly being Governor Christie's side will help you lose the next election. And when it comes to the Democrats, very smart. They didn't end up having pie on their face by voting for raises for their own staff. This will actually be very beneficial to the Democratic gubernatorial candidate.
Well, you know, you've talked about this a lot on this show and your radio show, and credit where credit is due. There is one person that really was the decisive vote in this, Phil Murphy, who starting on Sunday made phone calls to Democratic legislators to let them know that he did not support this. And I wonder if the real person who beat this back is Murphy, because they're going to have to deal with him in a year if he's elected, and he doesn't want to be starting off on the wrong foot with those Democratic legislators, and they don't want to be starting off on the wrong foot with him.
Do you think this is the end of the party leadership on both sides? I mean, we've seen now bill after bill come through where the party leadership seems to be completely out of touch and ineffective, and you know, not be able to get their caucus to do anything that they want. What happened to the back room?
No, I think they still have a lot of power. They still have good leadership, at least in the Senate. I think that this was just, you know, a groundswell of support against these bills, and I think that, you know, they were very reluctant to put a yes vote up. But I still think in the Senate in particular, you know, Steve does a good job with his leadership. I think the Speaker has some issues in his own caucus, but you know, they usually when they need to get 21 votes in the Senate, they usually do.
What I don't understand with this whole thing is that the Christie book deal ended up being essentially a poison pill for this bill. And there are some issues that you can at least debate. There's a legitimate need for more judges. You can make the argument that judges need to have higher salaries to attract more people to the bench. You can make the argument that the districts have not had an increase in their staff salaries since 2002. I don't understand why the governor put this one line in there that essentially doomed it when there are things in the bill that could be debated either way as being good.
Of course it makes sense. He was being selfish.
You can't say
let me ask you now, you know, we kind of knocked at the door when we were talking about the gas tax and went through. We came very, very close on question 2, but we really knocked it down on this one, and this deal is dead. What does that mean now if you look forward? Is there any chance in New Jersey now we can at least revisit some of the borrowing, the idea of the gas tax, all of these issues that now that the public is aware and they are clearly loud and outraged?
No question about it, Bill. The public is engaged, and I think that they realize that next year the entire legislature's up, including the governor, and I think they're going to be more. They're going to be watching very closely what goes on in Trenton. I think now that this is a win for the taxpayer. It's a win for the New Jersey resident because they realize that, you know, their voice does matter, and they were able to help defeat 2 terrible bills.
Well, we got our eyes on these guys. I think I've labeled it the corruption caucus. And it's a bipartisan problem in Trenton. But we'll be watching. You are certainly one of the good guys. Thanks, Kip. Appreciate your courage. Thanks.